Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Pretty Passionate Podcast, where we are doing what? Delving into the things that we are passionate about. We're having fun. We're letting loose. We are not afraid here to obsess over our passions. This week, of course, we are going to be talking about the Gilded Age, and I will mark for you all who are really interested in jumping right into that in the show notes exactly where that is going to start. But first, before we get into that, something interesting came across my phone. I was going to say my desk, but let's be real, I was looking at my phone, that I wanted to discuss with you all. So, I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm 44 and proud, and I'm also a transplant to the area where I currently live. So we live in the metro Atlanta area, my husband and I with our kids. Neither of us is from here. We've been here about 12 years now, and I have never felt 110% like this is home. Not in a bad way, but I think some of the elements that make a place feel like home are missing. All of my family does not live here. They live either in New Jersey, where I'm from. I have a sister who lives in the DMV. So those elements that really ground you to a place are automatically missing for me and my husband. Add to that the fact that making friends over a certain age is a really, I don't want to say impossible task, but making new friends in a new city when you are of a certain age and you are not a part of the club set, you're not a part of the bar crawl scene, you're not a single person who's out here, ready to mingle, looking for love and going to events for that purpose where you may just come across friends. So my question is, what the heck are women over 40 doing to make real friends? So here's the post on Threads that caught my attention and brought my attention to this topic. Now, the thread is referring to a particular type of woman in Atlanta who, if you know, there's like this bougie, badass, boss girl. That's why I'm wearing my entrepreneur shirt, right? In the spirit of this, because I'm an entrepreneur in Atlanta, but I don't feel like I have this particular energy. So the energy is this bougie, badass CEO, big boss girl who, she wears designer, she drives a $100,000 luxury car, and you meet this person. Well, I meet these kinds of folks all the time in my line of work as a plastic surgeon. I am taking care of these people as patients, actually, quite often. They're the well-heeled, they're the ones who can indulge in luxury services for self-maintenance. And so, I get a pretty good chance to meet a lot of these women. While I generally don't try to make friends of all my patients, I have observed this particular personality type in Atlanta. I started to think that maybe this was just an Atlanta thing, but what I observed in the threads is it's not just an Atlanta thing. A lot of women feel like this is happening in cities everywhere, where women are presenting themselves in social settings very standoffish, very like, I'm a boss, come at me, as opposed to, I guess there's not an openness anymore out there. People are not as open to or vulnerable to the idea of making new friends. I mean, Drake said it a long time ago, no new friends. And I know just about as well as anyone that you have to protect your sanity and your peace. So you definitely want to keep your circle small, but after a certain age, does the circle have to be so small that there is no room to expand? I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I pose this to myself periodically when I notice that I'll meet someone and they seem like someone I should have a ton in common with, be it cultural, mom, career, entrepreneurship, something. And then for whatever reason, I always attribute it to life. Just lifing, it just doesn't curl over. I can honestly say I have not established any new friendships here in Atlanta. I've got plenty of old friendships that I hold on to dearly because these are what I call foundational friendships, those people who know you your whole life. And it's like, not only are they just like family, but there's something so important to those relationships, to your mental health, to be able to connect with someone who you are able to be your organic self with. Not only that, you can't hide with that person. That person will pick up the phone and immediately be like, what's wrong? Because they can hear it in your voice. So I have those friendships. I'm thankfully blessed to have those. But I wonder when I watch a show like And Just Like That, or a show like Emily in Paris, or I don't know, anything like that, how are grown women, especially grown Black women, meeting and making new friends? Or is this something that just we are not doing because of that kind of stereotype of, I've got my circle, it's all set, I'm a boss, I don't need new friends? Or am I missing something? I'd like to know what y'all think. I'd like to hear your feedback on that. This is an open forum. I really want to hear your feedback on that, because I'm not trying to dump on Atlanta women. I'm not trying to dump on Black women. I'm not trying to dump on CEOs or anyone. I'm actually trying to figure it out, because this has been my experience. I see that it's a lot of other people's experience. So is this a trend, or is this just something that happens over 40? What's the story? How are women over 40 making friends? We also have to place the age also in a realistic context that many of us over 40 are married with children and career and responsibilities that limit our free time. But does that mean that there's just no room whatsoever for new connections? It's hard for someone to get to know you in the space of 6 months to a year. We're not necessarily revealing our complete, true, and authentic selves in those introductory periods of time. Also true is that by our 40s, many of us are stable in our careers, stable in our education. So we are running out of those organic meet new people moments, like when you start a new job and now you're going to meet all the new people in your office. Or if you are going to school, you may make friends with a classmate, someone who sits near you, and you guys connect for whatever reason. I met my closest friends in middle school, high school, college, and med school and residency. Those are the people that I would say are friends that I've known a long time. Some are closer than others. But now that I'm done with that stage of life, and I've been done with that stage of life for a long time, and I have these other very important preoccupying factors, I am not in a situation often where I'm not around people who work for me or in some way work with me in a professional capacity. Like, I work with some really awesome nurses, I work with some really awesome scrub techs, I work with, all types of people, but that's all work related, and there's a certain amount of professionalism that is demanded of those places. So I'm not going to go on a bender with my staff. Maybe that's something other surgeons can do, but I tend to tread a little bit more lightly in situations that may lead to controversy for me in my work life. I know that one of the things that our former Surgeon General pointed out is that we are in the throes right now in America of a loneliness epidemic, meaning people, no matter how connected they are by devices and all of our neat electronics and crap, are more disconnected now than they've ever been. I feel like we are all siloing, maybe unbeknownst to us, we are all siloing and getting into a point where groups of friends and new friendships are harder and harder to establish. So I want to hear from you. I want a comment, a suggestion, a thought, and I'm going to put it all together and share with you next week what everyone thinks about women of a certain age, making new friends. Is the new friend thing over after 30? Is it kind of just like you've got what you've got, so young women establish your circle or else? Or is there something I'm missing? Some source of genuine connection that me and many women in Atlanta are missing? Please send your emails on this topic, and please use the subject title of New Friends to prettyprescription17@gmail.com. I'm going to write it on the screen and put it in the show notes. prettyprescription17@gmail.com. I want to know what you think, and I will share what I think are the best suggestions on our podcast next week. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get down to business, because ciao. This episode, jam-packed as always with goodies, and left us on the edge of our seats by the end of this episode. The topic of discussion today is the Gilded Age Season 3, Episode 7, entitled Excommunicated. It was written by Julian Fellows and Sonia Warfield, and is directed by none other than Sally Richardson Whitfield. Oh. give her flowers. This was quite an episode. So the episode opens. We arrive at the revelation that a book is being circulated in stores in New York, and it is Ward McAllister's tell-all entitled Society as I Have Found It, which is a clever little title. The book distribution is giving us an interesting intro montage into all of the society women. We're getting a peek at their reactions to the book. It's sort of like one character will pick up the book and then a different character will be setting it down. One character's picking up a cup of tea, another character setting it down. And so it's a really beautifully done way that we jump from house to house to house, seeing how these society women are receiving this tell-all book. Okay. One thing that is apparent is that it is scandalous, and for Ward, it's a commercial success. This thing is flying off the shelves. We immediately get into a scene with Bertha Russell, Mrs. Forte. We're at Mrs. Forte's house. We've got Mrs. Astor in the building. We've got Agnes Van Ryn in the building and Mrs. Fish. They are all gathered together, I guess, as the leading ladies in society to talk about what's happened with Ward releasing this book and to decide how to respond. As usual, Mrs. Astor is kind of the lead hen here, right? And she is giving them their marching orders. She's letting them know that, everyone's kind of denying whether they read the book. Like, oh, no, I wouldn't read it, but I heard this. So, yes, we know y'all all read the book. Okay, and it seems like he has hit every single one of them, Mrs. Astor in particular, and we have an idea of what he'd be talking about with her. Agnes makes a really funny quip about Mrs. Fish's reaction to the book. Mrs. Fish is mad because he called out her husband for being cheap about wine. Mrs. Fish calls the allegation unkind and unfair. And Agnes is kind of like, yeah, they might have been unkind, but are they unfair? I love Agnes's humor. There they decide that the answer is going to be to ban Ward McAllister from society completely. And Mrs. Astor, it's a done deal, makes a decision. They round up the troops and head out. Later, Bertha actually visits Lena Astor at her home. And there we learn that in the book, it is revealed that Mrs. Drayton, Charlotte, her daughter, Mrs. Drayton's husband is suing her for divorce over her inappropriate friendship, as in affair that she had. Okay, all this is in the book, right? And in this same conversation, it becomes clear that Mrs. Astor is really not taking Mrs. Fish's advice about what she's going to do about divorced women in society. It's clear she's decided that she'd rather cancel her end-of-year event that she's supposed to be holding. So annually, she holds a giant ball marking the end of the season at her Newport estate. In her opinion, she'd be better off canceling the event, and that way she won't have to deal with the notion of whether her divorcing daughter or Mrs. Fane or any of them have to come. She just doesn't want anything to do with it. Bertha is not really sure about this plan, but as she's leaving, she also very calmly goes to her carriage, hops in, and completely ignores Mr. McAllister, who is desperately trying to wave her down and get her attention. As he arrives at Mrs. Astor's doorstep, her butler politely tells him she's not there, and he still muscles his way into Mrs. Astor's house to confront her about the fact that he now knows at this point that she has excluded him from society. He had arrived at an event and was completely snubbed and embarrassed at the door. He seems really interested in trying to get back in Lena's good graces and understand why she's excluding him in this way. And I'm like, what are you not understanding, Ward? You put her business out there. This is like the most staunch leader of the old guard. Didn't even want Mrs. Russell in the mix because she's just disgusting new money. And you think that after putting her daughter's business out on Front Street for all of the common New Yorkers to consume and to make fun of her and to make light of her situation, that she's going to forgive that? I don't know which version of Mrs. Astor would ever forgive such a thing. But he tries. He tries to lead with honey to allow himself back into Mrs. Astor's good graces. But when that seems not to work, he then does pull out the daggers. He claims that, child, he built this New York society, okay? He showed y'all the European ways. He showed you how to dress. He showed you how to throw parties. He showed y'all everything that you now hold dear in this Gilded Age was built on his know-how. And she lets him know that he was just a bumpkin from Savannah, Georgia, baby, and being a current resident of this great state of Georgia, I got a little kick out of that. So she lets him know that he needs to leave her house and he's not welcome again, and it's clear that his excommunication is final. Later on in the episode, Bertha's going through some things, man. She meets up with Ward McAllister somewhere after this incident happens at Lena Astor's house. Ward is just trying to get in somewhere. I'm surprised she actually met with him, but Bertha's very reasonable. And I think because Ward really helped her out during the opera battles, her fondness for him didn't just evaporate with him using some anecdotes about her family. Even if he didn't name names, people are able to put things together. So again, this is surprisingly gracious of her. So she meets with Ward for him to make his case for re-entry in society. It's there that she declares her intent to try to open society to divorced women, because by that point she's received news that Lena is actually handing over the responsibility of hosting the ball to her. Lena was intent on canceling, but received way too much pushback from society women who obviously are looking forward to this event culminating their season. So she says, all right, well, Bertha, you take the reins, which is crazy because essentially what she's just done is crown Bertha queen of New York society. She's essentially abdicated her position as the tastemaker of these women by letting Bertha throw this party, which Ward takes note of. Bertha's reluctant to accept, but she knows what's happening here. He tries to argue with her about if she's willing to give divorced women a chance, why can't he have a chance? And I'm like, sir, how are you like divorced women? And she immediately claps back with exactly my response, where she's like, I'm sorry, people like Aurora Fane did not have a choice in being a divorced woman, so why should she be shunned from society? Also, people like Charlotte have done maybe some shameful, salacious things, but men get away with this kind of thing all the time. And so for her, the problem is that women are not treated fairly. So she's making space for women who are treated unfairly in society by opening up the ball to divorced women. And that difference is very key and clear to her. And it's also clear that Ward is not going to be able to weasel his way back into society on her back. Thankfully, she's smart enough to understand the limits of her newfound power. In this way that she draws this clarity between Ward's situation and, say, Aurora Fane's situation, once again, she is cementing my opinion that she's a straight-up feminist. I'm going to argue for this, even though she did what she did with Gladys. The way that she helped Gladys win her power back was by using her feminine power. She didn't tell her to shrink back and let Lady Sarah win, to shrink back and let Hector think he's the man. She told her to really tap into her power as a woman to make him fall in love with her, take charge of the house, and push Lady Sarah out of the way. I think you can't make an argument that she's not a feminist, but she's a feminist of her time. She's not a suffragist. She's a feminist of her age. She is not necessarily trying to change things, but she's very much working in the favor of women, supporting women to make change and improve the situation of women. So I can't argue against it at this point. Later, she lets George know that they are hosting the ball in Newport. And at the time, he is seemingly in a better mood, but he and Larry kind of just dismiss her. So it's clear that George is still so closed off to her. That's the long and short of what happens with Bertha in this episode. On to George Russell. We catch up with him in his office. This dude is apparently fighting for his life. He's opening up envelopes in a way, and them envelopes look like just a bunch of bills, and it takes me back to my days as a broke fellow in resident, where opening up the mail was a very traumatic situation. He's facing the very real possibility of going broke, since we know that he was unable to drum up the extra funds to try and buy back stock from Russell Industries, which was plummeting because of the bad rumors that Mr. Sage, who now is about to buy the Merrick Railroad, had spread about him and tanked his deal with Mr. Merrick. Follow? So, he's in a bad way. Bertha, in this moment, she about chooses the worst moment to approach her husband to talk to him about anything. But she tries to walk in and tell him, like, hey, I'm back. Everything is going great now with Gladys. I fixed everything, which is actually true, right? Later on, we'll get a sneak peek in Gladys's life, and we'll see that Bertha did her job. She was as good as her word, and she made a way for Gladys to find happiness in this relationship. That information is not well received by George. He is so nasty to her that I, covered my mouth. I was like, oh. She requested at that point that he return to the house to live with her because he is still staying at the Union Club. And it looks really bad. Unfortunately, George is really just worked up at this moment. And he snaps at her, and he's just awful to her and tells her, listen, if you don't have something to talk to me about besides Newport parties and whatever tea's going on with you ladies, you can get on out. Even though she's right that it is critically important for them to present a united front right now, George is uninterested in that. So in that moment that she's being put out of her husband's office, she's also learning that they may be headed to the poorhouse. He doesn't elaborate any further. And as you can tell from my reaction, I think he treated her very unfairly. Even if he still believes that she treated Gladys unfairly and Gladys may be unhappy right now, I don't know. I still don't think her actions merited this reaction, given that he was also in a position to prevent her from marrying Gladys off. Last time we talked about this, he didn't let himself off completely, but this episode, he's like completely unilaterally making Bertha this villain in the family, and I don't like it. Larry returns from Morenci triumphant. He walks into the house. Church hands him a letter from Marion. He learns that she's broken up with him. Bad news. He runs straight out of that house across the street to the Van Ryn Forte house to confront Marion. I don't think he's angry at all, so confront is maybe a strong word, but he really wants to know what the heck happened in the space of time that he was gone. Remember, it was about a month that he was away, I believe. So that's a lot. That's a big 180 from when he left and they were celebrating. He tries to get in touch with Marion. Ada is playing door guard and lets him know that Marion's not interested in talking to him. And Ada tries to give him back the ring. Larry's like, I'm not taking that back. Marion needs to give it to me herself and give me an opportunity to speak with her, which I think is a fair demand. Ada promises him that she will convey this to Marion and try to convince her to talk to him. Back at his mansion with his dad, Larry has shared the news with his father that the land in Morenci is worth millions of dollars, that they were wrong with the original survey, and that there's tons of copper, high-grade copper in those fields, that they had a new survey done confirming those suspicions. And George is really happy, wanting to celebrate, but Larry is too sad to celebrate because of obviously the bad news he just received. And he reveals to his dad that Marion broke up with him. When Bertha walks in on this situation and she tries to comfort Larry, we obviously know that she had nothing to do with it, but both George and Larry are very suspicious of Bertha. She's innocent here, so it's tragic that they treat her this way, and they both decide that they're staying at the Union Club. Larry's like, I gotta get out of here, and he actually is convinced that she had something to do with it. I guess because of the way she's moved in the past, we can't blame him exactly for having his suspicions about his mom, but I don't love that they give her no opportunity to clarify, to illuminate anything. They're just concluding her guilt, and that feels unfair. So George calls her out on her ambition and tells her that, you see, this is why you're going to end up alone, because your ambition is alienating you from the entire family. Again, I don't love the way George is moving here, because I don't feel that Bertha was acting completely alone on the ambition thing until the marriage of Gladys to Hector. When it came to the opera, when it came to inviting this person over, inviting that person over, and manipulating her way into high society, which in turn benefited George in his business dealings, I don't feel like George was against her ambition. But now that he has some guilt about how things worked out for Gladys, he's putting it squarely in her lap, and that's not, to me, completely fair. Whether or not it will stay in her lap, we'll see. I really want Bertha to fire back at him in one of these moments. Like, hey, you're the purse strings of the family. You had the ability to put an end to all of this if you wanted to, and you didn't. So please don't saddle me with all of your guilt here. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, due to the good news that George has received, he calls a meeting between him, Mr. Sage, Clay, his former manager, and Larry. Still thinking they have the upper hand. Mr. Sage is sitting there kind of smug, talking to Mr. Russell, you know? And Mr. Russell, well, he promptly shows him the truth of the paperwork that proves that the land in Morenci is actually quite valuable. And he lets him know, obviously, at this point, there is no chance that Mr. Morgan is going to side with them in the Merrick deal, and that essentially will cost Mr. Sage the deal with the Merrick family. because once Mr. Morgan is swayed one way or the other, obviously he's going to be able to put pressure on the Merrick family to close on the Illinois Railroad deal in favor of George Russell. So he lets him know he's cooked. Mr. Sage, of course, he packs it up and leaves in a huff, simultaneously firing Clay and letting him know that he's an idiot for not having double-checked the land findings. Great. George, feeling very triumphant, kind of kicks back in his chair and he lets Clay know, like, you're defeated, bro. You're not going to work in this town again. He even goes so far as to offer him a job in his mines in Pittsburgh if he wants to. Remember the Pittsburgh miners that Mr. Clay almost had killed in that union dispute? Yeah. So, of course, Clay turns this down. He's seething. And he vows that he's going to recover from this. He vows that he's not done with this town, and this town is not done with him. I don't know, but I get the impression that he's right or something. Somehow I believe him. He's scrappy. He refers to himself as a cockroach, and everybody knows the joke about cockroaches being one of the few species that would survive a nuclear apocalypse. If you describe yourself as a cockroach, you make me nervous, because I know that means that you believe in your resilience to a level that we all know most of us don't have. So I'm worried about how Clay leaves this. It worries me that his vendetta with Mr. Russell is far from over, and George does not see that. He sees that he's won and he's moving on. Clay has more fuel in his tank to spend the rest of his life trying to take George Russell down. Towards the end of the episode, George is clearly in better spirits, clapping Larry on the back and about to send him off to Chicago to close this railroad deal with the Merrick family. Fingers crossed, this actually works, and we can see George triumphantly build his transcontinental railroad. On to Gladys and Hector, the Duke and the Duchess. You can see I'm happy. Why? Because Gladys is happy. They are moving in a good direction. Here's how I know. Hector learns by telegram that George is possibly going broke, that he won't be making this month's payment, and that he might not be able to make future payments. I'm actually stunned by this transparency, but also I can understand why he felt the need to let him know. He tells his sour sister, Lady Sarah, and that has the nerve, I just mouthed the B word for those of you who are only listening. She has the nerve, Lady Sarah, to tell Hector to get rid of Gladys. Like, oh, well, if the money's not coming, I hope you find a way to get rid of her. Get rid of her how? Get rid of her how? They're married. That marriage has very much been consummated, as we well know. Exactly what terms would he have to get rid of her? I'm interested in that. Historically, I thought infidelity was the only reason, but especially because they were married in New York, what is he going to sue her for infidelity? I don't think he can do that or prove that. Thankfully, it seems we'll never have to know because he lets Lady Sarah know right then and there he doesn't plan on getting rid of Gladys, even if the money doesn't show up. We are encouraged by this. This is beautiful news. And then Hector and Gladys have a lovely walk in their gardens, which are beautiful, by the way. Gladys is remarking about the irises. Hector is telling her that the irises remind him of a dress she wore to the opera, I guess when they first met. Gladys is like, oh, you remember? And he's like, yeah, girl, I've been feeling you for a long time. I just didn't, And it becomes clear to me that, okay, maybe it really wasn't only about the money all along. Of course, we know he went to America to find a rich American heiress to marry to save Sidmouth Castle. But is it possible that our dear Hector, the Duke, was also looking for someone he could fall in love with? Or is it just that Bertha is that damn good and that quickly he just starts falling for his wife? Which is a weird thing to say, but you know what I mean with arranged marriages. Hector is growing very fond of his wife, and I'm happy about that. Later on, he's even more overt with his intentions to build a lovely life with her when he sends those irises she was admiring to her room as cut flowers. And he tells her that even if the money doesn't come, he believes that Gladys is smart enough and talented enough to help them figure out a way to save Sidmouth Castle without her father's money. I mean, swoon. I'm a sucker for love. And it's crystal clear that Bertha's plan is actually working. All the more reason for me to be upset with how George and Larry are treating her right now, knowing that it's actually working. That the life she dreamed up for Gladys is coming to fruition. The power she wanted to put in Gladys's hands is actually in her hands now. She has the Duke's heart. She has a pleasant life there. There's a couple kinks to still work out with Lady Sarah, but what's clear is that Hector is now on her side working out those kinks. Gladys it's kind of falling for Hector too. Again, I'm starting to forgive Bertha a little bit. Probably sooner than George ever will. Once the Duke and Duchess receive the invitation to the end of the season ball, they sit Lady Sarah down, figuratively and literally, and let her know that they're heading back to New York to attend this ball in Newport, that her mother is now hosting. Lady Sarah makes a snarky comment and Gladys claps back immediately. Oh, so the only reason my mother would want to see me is to show me off? There should be no other reason why a mother would want to see her own daughter? And Lady Sarah is like, zip, she knows she's overstepped. Again, Hector makes a very unsubtle suggestion that Lady Sarah find herself a house in London while they're away. And he doesn't mean go to the London house of the Buckingham estate. He means get yourself your own house and get out of our house and our business. But he says it in a very loving way. And they couch it that they're trying to relieve her of all the stress and duty of running the castle and the day-to-day operations. Essentially, Gladys is like, move out the way. I am the Duchess. I am here to stay. We got this. They even do a very cute little handhold at the end of the scene. And you could see that Lady Sarah is not just glowering, but that she is very much hurt. She's very hurt by this. If I didn't hate her so much, I might actually feel bad for her. But I don't. This is payback for me. This is a righteous payback. And I'm enjoying it. We leave the scene super excited at the fact also that, hello, we are likely, before the end of the season, going to see the Duchess descend upon New York society and all of her finery in a happy situation. And my hope is that George, seeing Gladys in her Duchess power, happy with her husband, that's going to resolve the conflict between him and Bertha. Because they need to get it together already. It's too much at this point. We're treated to a scene between Mr. Church, Mrs. Bruce, and Mr. Bronner back at the Russells' estate. They are laying a trap for Mrs. Andre. Now that they have had reason to suspect her, they're going to do an age-old and time-tested method for rooting out a rat in your organization. You tell the rat something that you're only letting the rat know. So it's a very specific embellishment or lie, something that's not true, something that is harmless, but it's a very specific piece of information that the rat will then use to expose themselves. Their thinking is if they tell Miss Andre this very teeny little lie about a house being purchased in New York for the Duke and Duchess, and that they're hiring staff for that house, that Miss Andre will carry that little bit of cheese back to the big rat who's been paying her for information about the Russells. Got it? Of course, she completely falls for it. Hook, line, and sinker. She does exactly what they predict, and Mr. Church catches her at a park, taking an envelope. So they meet her back at the house, honey. The three of them, gang, they're in the house. They're like, so you want to tell us? Exactly, like, we're trying to figure out how much you've been getting paid for selling all of the Russell secrets and betraying the family that is graciously employing you. She lets them know she gets paid $40 a secret. I'm imagining it's not an insignificant amount of money for someone who works in a service role like she does. She's like, money's money and more is good. So makes no apologies for what she did. And she's like, well, let me pack up my stuff. They're like, your stuff is packed for you, honey. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I got a laugh out of that. It was a small scene, but it was really funny. And Mr. Church is like, hey, I'm about that life. Okay, I wasn't a butler. I wasn't born a butler. I know a scammer when I see one. So I love that little scene between them. On to Mr. Oscar Van Ryn. So I thought the episode would actually open with Oscar, given how the last episode ended with the tragic death of John Adams, his savior, as he said at the end of the episode. But no, we get a little time to cook with Oscar in his mourning, okay? Oscar's very clearly mourning him, but he's stuffing it way deep down. His family checks on him. He's like, I'm fine. He minimizes his pain, heads out to meet someone. Turns out he's meeting up with the deceased John Adams' sister, Mrs. Bell. She reveals, in a very sweet and caring manner, that she actually knew all about Oscar and his relationship with her brother. She lets him know that she doesn't judge her brother, that she has not shunned him and doesn't plan to, and she also doesn't plan to reveal his secrets. Apparently, John kept a picture of Oscar in his dresser drawer, which was, like, so sweet. She offers Oscar a picture of John to remember him by. I mean, this is not a time of camera phones. It's probably true that Oscar doesn't even have a photo of John. I love how gentle she's being with Oscar with this topic, letting him know that she knows his secret. And the biggest surprise of all, she reveals that John bequeathed an entire cottage, a lakeside cottage, to Oscar. Now, of course, given the times, he could not officially in his will leave the cottage to Oscar. That would raise entirely too many questions in their society. That's just not the kind of thing that happens. But he left it to his sister, and he left his sister with instruction to give it to Oscar. He also left a letter for Oscar. We're not privy to the contents of that letter at this point, but I'm hoping that maybe we will get to know what his final words were for Oscar. After this meeting, Oscar arrives back at the house, completely confused and conflicted about the fact that in his death even, John has benefited him so much. He's looked out for him. He has loved him even in his absence. And that is making the loss of John even more difficult for him to deal with. Given the times, Oscar shares that he can't mourn for his lover the way that John's wife might be allowed to mourn for him. He shares at the house, after being pressed about his grief and pressed about his mood, that he's hurt that he can't openly mourn this man who was so important to him, who was his friend. He talks about how at the funeral, he sat at the back like someone who just dipped in real quick from the rain when he should have had his rightful and he cuts it off. I thought in that moment he was going to reveal his sexuality to his family. His mother, Ada, and Marion are sitting there receiving this news. But he doesn't. He just breaks down and he's crying. Ada and Marion are quick to cover for him and kind of, kick some dirt over it and say, of course he's upset. This man saved his life. Look how good he was to him, expecting nothing in return. Wouldn't you be upset if your friend died like that, etc., etc.? They kind of minimize his lashing out to help Oscar continue to not have to speak the truth of his relationship with John Adams out loud. What is so amazing about this exquisite set of Broadway professionals is that with no words about Oscar's sexuality, it is abundantly clear that Agnes, Ada, and Marion are totally in on the secret. They know. They know without a doubt. They understand, and now they understand the depth of Oscar's grief. The scene ends. It's so brilliant how they end the scene, where the three of them, Oscar goes up to his room. They're going to send dinner up to him. They focus on Agnes's face, which is a little pinched, but not angry. She's sad. She's so sad, and the sadness registers so well on her face. And then the women wordlessly just go back to what it is they were doing. Don't say anything. I'm telling you, this show is so good at these moments, these rooms, these conversations that we are privy to, that we are flies on the wall in. It's so human, the way that these people, these characters are portrayed. That's exactly what would happen in a conservative family, even today. I was thinking about, even in 2025, that very same interaction could still happen for a man who has yet to reveal his sexuality to his family. A closeted man might well find himself mourning someone who was more than a friend that his family chooses pretty much to ignore and kind of look the other way and act like they don't notice until it's inevitable and impossible for them to do so. So I just hats off to the four of them. That scene was acted out so brilliantly, it blew my mind. Later, Marion goes to visit Oscar in his room, and they have a more in-depth conversation where she lets him know, like, I know. Now, I know. I didn't know before, but it's very clear to me now. Not only does she let him know that she knows, she lets him know that she has no intentions of shunning him and that she's still here for him, and she wants him to tell her, like, how can I support you? And in that moment, I got so teary-eyed because this is so real life. It's so real life. Yes, it's a period drama. Yes, it's set in the 19th century, but it is such a relevant topic. This is, to me, exactly the kind of thing that hits home, even like the drama going on in Black Newport and the residents of Black Newport with Peggy and everything. It's such a relevant topic, even in modern times. That's what's stunning about the way they're able to portray the drama happening between these Gilded Age people. But this kind of drama being able to communicate across the centuries, I mean, chef's kiss. Exquisitely done. Speaking of Marion, right? We see her spending most of the episode grappling with her breakup with Larry. Of course, we saw her in that last scene with Oscar. We also get the impression that she's kind of avoiding Larry. Even though he's back in town, we know, and he's aware about the breakup, we get the impression throughout the episode that she is purposely not putting herself in a room with him. At some point, Ada even tries to convince Marion to hear Larry out. Okay, she's refusing. She even makes a comment that she'd rather just be a spinster than be married to him. Or I guess married to anyone, because at this point she feels like all the men in her life have disappointed her, including her dad. At that moment, Ada and her have a very touching conversation where Ada lets her know, like, no, my dear, no, don't close yourself off to love. There's no way that spinsterhood is a path that anyone should choose. Clearly, Ada's speaking from experience. She's someone who has experienced spinsterhood and doesn't want that for her beloved niece. She knows the pain, and she said, spinsterhood involves basically seeing other people move on with their lives and smiling for them while hiding your own secret pain. And I guess Marion didn't realize that. So they have a touching moment that seems to somewhat soften Marion's stance. She never voluntarily meets up with Larry, so he shows up at her place of work. He tries to explain himself. He's more apologetic than anything, and he really just wants her to hear his side of the story, but Marion will hear none of it. He lets her know nothing happened for him. Yes, he did lie about going to Delmonico's, but also this is a very normal place that exists in their society that he went to, and he went there and did nothing but have a drink. She's firm on their breakup. She's like, no, thanks for letting me know, but I don't trust you because you lied to me. Later on, we see Marion helping Jack, our new millionaire, find a fine house to establish himself in. He's doing a tour of a house. I'm going to assume it's not far from the Van Ryn house, just because that makes me happy. The place is fully furnished, ready to move in, ready for him to have a staff and everything. And Jack is still like, I can't believe this is my life. But I'm happy that they gave us an update on him and that we get to see that he's still in touch with members of the Van Ryn Forte household. Thankfully, this is also an opportunity for literally the only person in the world who could exonerate Larry to do so. He lets Marion know, I guess now that she's no longer officially his employer, and she can't really hurt him, he lets Marion know, like, that night, nothing happened. Larry didn't do anything. He showed up there, yes, instead of Delmonico's at the Haymarket, but he had a drink, and then he says he walked Larry home. That is about as exonerating of a statement as could possibly exist. And you can see that Marion is confused by this information. There's like a hint of regret on her face, and she almost like doesn't want to believe that she could have been so wrong. I was thinking, girl, see, now that you know you were wrong and you didn't listen to every single person in your life who loves you and was giving you advice to slow down, now I hope it's not too late. Like, now I hope that the last conversation they had in front of that chalkboard has not driven Larry straight into the arms of that Newport lady or something, you know, or maybe he's gonna go off to the Haymarket. At that point, I'm like, oh gosh, a man whose heart is broken. Who knows what he's about to do? On to Peggy and Dr. Kirkland. We catch up with them, enjoying a beautiful picnic in the park with Dr. Kirkland. The sun is shining, the trees are green, love is in the air. He invites her to be his personal guest at a ball benefiting his father's church. In this moment, he's very forward and very romantic with her. He's making eyes with her, and it almost feels like he was just barely holding back the urge to tell her that he's falling in love with her. He told her, I love our time together. I think about you often. All the things that one might say leading up to, I think I'm falling in love with you. Eep. Okay. And he even seemed open to acknowledging and working on the fact that her relationship with his mother is not great. I was really scared last episode because during that little carriage ride with him and his mother, I didn't feel like he was pushing back enough on the things she was saying, and I was scared that he was a complete mama's boy. Hearing William confirm that he's not just turning a blind eye to the conflict that exists between his mother and Peggy is very encouraging. So, okay, not as hopeless of a mama's boy as I may have suspected. We then immediately transition, right? We can't even enjoy our damn moment at the picnic because we immediately transition to Newport, where Mrs. Messy Elizabeth is at a friend's house. This friend's name is Ernestine. They're having tea, and they're also spilling tea about Peggy's past. She is convinced, of course, that William is still playing the field, that Peggy's just a plaything. You know how these young men do. And this nosy friend then alludes to Peggy's past, like, oh, okay, well, that's a relief given Peggy's past. Oh, what is this past? Elizabeth wants to know. This is the scene from the mid-season trailer we saw, where Elizabeth was obviously learning the truth about what Peggy's past really consists of. Miss Ernestine is happy to share that while she was visiting her sister in Philadelphia, she learned that Peggy had a child that was now deceased from scarlet fever, and that the baby had actually been adopted to a family in the Philadelphia area before it died. This is shocking news. Of course, Miss Elizabeth's first question is, was this baby born out of wedlock? And Ernestine is like, no, my sister was pretty sure that there was a marriage, but where's the husband? So that's one big question. Where is his husband now? Is Peggy still married? Is she divorced? Ew, says Elizabeth. Like, she uses the word tainted woman. And if I could reach through this television and grab Felicia Rashad, oh, that's how I know she's such a phenomenal actress, because she draws powerful emotions out of me by way of her performance. So she is on a warpath. She says, oh no, William does not know this truth. She did not tell us. We did not know now about a baby. What kind of woman adopts out her own flesh and blood? Like, she doesn't even want to hear Peggy's side of it, because the fact is that this is news to them, and she feels very strongly this is something Peggy should have told them from the jump. So she heads on back to New York on the next thing, clippity-clopping. I am literally in this moment quaking in my boots because I'm like, oh, the progress that they made just now. Okay. So Peggy, meanwhile, is at her suffragettes meeting. It's going off very well. The room is actually a more mixed than I expected crowd of women who are there to hear about the suffragist movement. Ada's beaming and so happy to be the sponsor. And while that's going on, we also get a snippet of Elizabeth Kirkland arriving in New York City at Dr. Kirkland's house, or his office. House office, I assume, to spread her gossip about Peggy. And somehow it feels like both of these scenes are about to collide. Girls back at the Van Rijn-Forte house are getting all cute and giggly with Peggy, talking about how they've heard about this William character and asking her if wedding bells are coming and all that. And William is learning the truth from his mother about Peggy's past. We bounce back and forth between the meeting and Dr. Kirkland. He's grappling with this news. He's like, but, logically, he's questioning the validity of some of these claims, and he does the right thing. Again, I applaud him. He does the right thing and rushes off to speak to Peggy himself, showing up at the Van Rijn-Forte house. He apologizes for the lateness of the hour, but demands to speak with her, and Bannister is obliging. In the final scene of the episode, George Russell, still patting himself on the back about how well everything went. He's wrapping up with his manager, Brinkley, thanking him for his hard work. Shout out to Larry, packing up his stuff because he's preparing to head back to the Union Club, where he's still staying because he don't know how to stay home. He don't want to stay in the same house as Bertha because he's being petty, okay? That's why. Jones, who I assume is his valet, walks in to announce that a cab is actually waiting for him outside to take him to the club. A strange man follows in shortly behind Jones, kind of gives a little rap on the door and is like, hey, I have a delivery for Mr. George Russell. Jones, being the valet, says, oh, I'll take it. The man pulls out a pistol and pow, pow, pow. That's the end of Jones. Jones caught it all in the vital organs at close range. Then he takes square aim at Mr. Russell, and the camera shows us George Russell's face, his reaction. We don't know what he's about to do. Brinkley is obviously still in the room, but then the camera focuses on the pistol and it fires off a shot. We don't know what happens because roll credits. I feel like I need some smelling salts at the end of that scene. Okay, sorry to shout, but really, truly, I was like, I screamed at the end of that scene. Okay, my poor husband. He's like always in the next room while I'm watching this. He's like, what's wrong? You okay? I'm like, please ignore me while I'm watching The Gilded Age. This is an hour of time where you can just ignore all of my reactions. Oh, I had so much fun, by the way, watching this show with my sister last week when we were at the beach house in North Carolina, because we were both like, Anyway, drama runs in the family. Roll credits to our preview for the next week, which is the season finale, y'all. This show is unbelievable. They're not afraid to let us know in the preview for the season finale that George has been shot. I was like, whoa. I thought we were going to have to wait a whole week to know. Kind of like, is he shot? Is he not shot? Did the guy shoot Brinkley instead? No. George is very shot, and he's got blood, and they're carrying him in the middle of the foyer of the 61st Street house, and they're laying him out on the floor, and we see Mrs. Russell, like, is he breathing? And she's wringing her hands, and there's carriage movement. So it's a whole dramatic scene, and we know for sure that George Russell's life is hanging in the balance. We also see what looks like a showdown between Dorothy Scott and Elizabeth Kirkland, where she's calling out her hypocrisy, and I am here for it. I cannot wait for that showdown between two mamas. Simultaneously, though, there's a conversation happening between William Kirkland, Dr. Kirkland, and Peggy Scott. And I can't tell if the conversation is going well, but Peggy's trying to make her case that eventually she was going to clue him in to this part of her history. Let's hope Dr. Kirkland is going to be extremely understanding. In a shocking change of her usual stance, we also get a scene where Agnes is urging Marion to return to Larry and try to repair the relationship. I'm not sure what changed her mind, except maybe that she got the information from Marion that Jack told her, that Larry's actually innocent and that he didn't do dirty things at the Haymarket. Who knows? But I was just really shocked to see Agnes actually being pro Marion and Larry getting back together. We know that the season is going to end at a grand ball in Newport at the Russell estate in Newport. And I cannot wait for the fashion. They showed a little bit of the dresses and the dancing. I love that time. I love that how people got all gussied up and pretty with the feathers and everything. I can't wait. I simply cannot wait. And I love that Newport mansion. Cottage that the Russells have. I can't wait to see it. Obviously, there's going to be a major bit of drama happening at this ball. I am assuming the ball is going to happen, even though we don't know if George Russell is alive at this point. All of this is happening, and there's this potential clash between Mrs. Russell and Mrs. Astor about letting divorced women into the event. It's all converging. There's a scene with poor Peggy where she's crying into her mother's lap, and her mother is telling her, "You're worthy," and she's sobbing, and I'm like, oh no. Did William break up with her? I don't know. Very worrisome. There's going to be major payoff for all the tension and all the storylines that have been built up during this amazing season of television. I trust this show with this finale. I do. Normally, I get a little apprehensive about a finale. Like, what are they going to leave as a cliffhanger to keep us coming back for season 4? But I trust this show. Because there's 2 previous seasons where they concluded the drama and gave us a little taste about what's coming. So I trust that they're going to conclude this drama, give us major payoff. I hope it's a long episode, like it's a full hour of television. I hope Mrs. Kirkland gets told off for filth by Mrs. Scott. It's just a lot, and I'm excited, as you can see. I'm very visibly excited. So I'm going to calm down and bid you all a fabulous rest of your day or night whenever you're listening to this. I want to thank you all for listening to the Pretty Passionate podcast. I'm having fun doing this. I'm appreciating your constructive feedback that I've been receiving. Thank you for the likes and support and the watches. Please do not forget to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and whatever streaming podcast platform of your choosing. We are available on all of them. I would also appreciate a share of this podcast with any friends or family who you think might enjoy this content and enjoy joining in the group chat with us. Don't forget to send your responses to my opening question, if you didn't skip, about over 40 friendships to prettyprescription17@gmail.com. I look forward to your responses. Look forward to talking to y'all soon. Thank you for now. Let's continue to live a life that is fueled by our determination to enjoy our passions. Okay, thanks.